We're going to be talking about one of my favorite people in the entire world, Neera Tanden. I'm sorry. One of the worst people in the entire world, Neera Tanden. She's been kind of in the news lately because she's one of Biden, of course, one of Biden's nominees. She paid her dues within the Democratic Party. She was, a loyal Hillary Clinton advisor. She's been within the Democratic Party for a while. She runs the Center for American Progress, which is a think tank, which basically is just a way for these political operatives to funnel money in and out. They hire consultants, they put out legislation that, the administrations will take up, all that type of stuff. So that's what she's been the president of for a while. Now she's being nominated for the Office of Management and Budget, which is, it's not a meaningless position, but it's not the most important position either. But she's been getting a lot of stink in the news because she is one of the most online people you could actually ever imagine. She, I think from 2016 to 2020, actually tweeted more than Trump, which is impressive. So we're going to kind of show why everyone on the right and the left really, really hates Neera Tanden. Now, the people on the right hate her because she called Tom Cotton a fraud, I believe. He's a Republican senator. She called Mitch McConnell Moscow Mitch, which is kind of a very liberal thing that is online as well. She said vampires have more of a heart than Ted Cruz or something like that, which, a lot of these things aren't necessarily false. But of course, the Republicans and within the committee, when she was being questioned, were obviously bringing that up. But the people on the left hate her for a different reason. She's notorious for being a Bernie basher. Bernie and his whole movement. At every single turn, she made sure to completely shit on the movement, call people sexist, misogynist if they didn't, outright support Hillary Clinton. If they had any type of criticisms for Hillary Clinton or anyone really within the mainstream establishment of the Democratic Party, she would, basically call you out, say you're trying to help Trump win, et cetera, et cetera. None of these things are true, but, she pushed that, and she had an army behind her doing that as well. So this is why a lot of people on the left hate her. Let's dive into just a few of the things that she tweeted. Now, first off, I'm blocked. I'll show y'all why at the end of the segment, but I'm blocked. So there's not a lot of stuff I can see from her profile. And she deleted like 1,000 tweets before she became the nominee because obviously she wanted to get rid of most of what she had been saying because a lot of it was incendiary things. So let's look at one of the tweets here. She says this was in the beginning of the pandemic last year. She says over 6,000 Americans have died from the coronavirus, 1,000 just today. We have one of the fastest growing death rates in the world. Remember, this tragedy was avoidable, this loss of life avoidable. If only our country prepared for it, just as countries like South Korea did, a country that has Medicare for all, I think. So someone says, hashtag Medicare for all. Neera responds, you might want to check out the death rate in France before you think that form of health system is the answer here. So of course, like normal, Neera Tanden is spectacularly wrong. At the time, of course, because Europe got hit before the United States, France had more deaths and cases than the United States at the time. Now, if you look at the cases, France had a total of 3.61 million cases, and the United States has a total of 28.2 million cases, with France having 85,000 deaths and the United States having 500,000 deaths. So, Neera, you might want to revisit that talking point, that BS talking point, that having universal health care and anyone being able to go to the doctor when they're sick during a pandemic and not have to worry about expenses is not the right form of health, a system we should have in this country during a healthcare pandemic. So that's just one example of her being spectacularly wrong, tweeting out, things that are objectively false, and being rewarded by almost getting a spot or potentially getting a spot in the administration. Here's the next tweet. Neera says, oddly, when Russia was trying to elect Trump, they did not attack Bernie Sanders. They chose to help him. They did this in the Democratic primary. They attacked the other candidate. So now she's saying that Russia wanted Bernie to win. That's why Bernie was so popular. It couldn't be that, he was pushing for things that the rest of the world takes for granted, like universal health care, free public college, actually investing in infrastructure, giving people paid leave, having an actual minimum wage that helps people survive. Like, it couldn't have been any of that stuff. It had to be Russia. Russia was the one helping Bernie. So she was another one of these people pushing these BS talking points, this bullshit that, a lot of people ran with, and was the reason people wouldn't support someone like Bernie, even though he was obviously the right choice, especially given the pandemic, the health pandemic we're in right now. So these are just some of the reasons why people on the left hate Neera Tanden. Here's why everyone should hate Neera Tanden. Take a look at this tweet. This was from WikiLeaks, which is another reason why she, hates Julian Assange, would love to see him killed. And, parrots this idea that Russia was the reason that Hillary Clinton lost, even though it was Hillary Clinton not being a good candidate. So here, Faiz Shakir, who actually ended up being Bernie's campaign manager, but at the time worked at Think Progress, which was the journalistic arm of Center for American Progress at the time. She, Faiz, I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly how to say his name, said, "I don't think it's fair that we create our own domestic problems and then ask other nations to pay for it. You see the adverse incentive problem here, right? If we think we can make money off of an incursion, we'll do it. That's a serious policy / messaging / moral problem for our foreign policy. I would have to agree. I don't think we should invade other countries because they have resources that we want. That's not legal. That's an international war crime. We've done it, obviously, plenty of times, and Neera Tanden has no problem with that." She responds saying, "We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. Most Americans would choose not to engage in the world because of that deficit. If we want to continue to engage in the world, gestures like having oil-rich countries partially pay us back doesn't seem crazy to me. Do we prefer cuts to Head Start or WIC or Medicaid? Because we live in deficit politics, and that's what is happening and what will be happening even more." Okay, so first off, she's advocating for going into another country, stealing their natural resources because we have a deficit here at home, partially because we fund the military to the tune of $900 billion a year. But she says, well, no, we have to go engage in the world, aka overthrow countries, invade countries, destabilize entire regions. She says we have to go do that because we have a deficit at home. And if they pay us back, it doesn't seem crazy to me. First off, we invaded their country. We're taking their oil. That's not paying us back. And I don't think a country would want us to pay us back for invading and destabilizing their country, turning their country into a failed state. So right off the bat, you can see she's extremely senile and crazy. But Joe Biden thinks that she should be in the administration. And then she creates this false dichotomy saying, oh, well, you can either have the invasion of Libya in countries like Libya, or you can have Medicaid, or you can have a program that helps poor people get health insurance, or you could have Head Start, or you can have some of these other, programs that poor people need to survive. So you can either have one or the other. Well, I'd venture to say, I think we could afford that type of stuff if we stopped going and using billions, if not trillions of dollars in other countries, destroying them. That's just me. Let's continue. So she also, let's look at this tweet. In 2015, Center for American Progress researchers wrote a report on U.S. Islamophobia with a 4,300 word chapter on the Bloomberg era NYPD. So Mike Bloomberg, who was allowed to run the Democratic Party in primary in 2020, used to be the Republican mayor of New York City. And of course, New York NYPD has, a storied history of not only Islamophobia, but stop and frisk, terrorizing black and brown people. So when the report was published, the chapter was gone. What happened to that 4,300 word chapter? Well, let's see. By then, Bloomberg had given Cap $1.5 million. That number has grown. So because Mike Bloomberg came in and gave money, now remember, a Republican mayor gave money to the Center for American Progress, a liberal think tank, the leading liberal think tank in Washington, then all of a sudden that chapter about Mike Bloomberg, because he gave that money to Neera Tanden and Cap, was removed. She doesn't seem extremely corrupt and bought out by money. Like, these are the type of people that Joe Biden is surrounding himself with. Like, it's hard to even fathom that someone like this could even get close to a position of power. But she's played the game. She's worked within the party. She's paid her dues. And now she's up for a position. Let's continue. This was, let's see. So this was an article from Jacob. And this is something that she said, I believe this was in the 90s, when she was still a Hillary Clinton aide. She said that comes on top of cuts in Medicare for the Affordable Care Act. Okay, so this must have been maybe in like 2008, 2009. So he has put specific cuts in the budget in Medicare, and they had savings in Medicaid in the past. I think the question it really is, if we're going to have a deal to address long-term deficit reduction, we need to put both entitlements on the table as well as taxes. So when they say put things on the table, that means, oh, it's up for a cut. That means Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, the programs, the most popular programs, federal programs in the country that help the least amongst us disproportionately the most, they say, oh, we should put that on the table for cuts because, you know, we have this huge deficit. And where else could we get the money but from poor people who need it the most? I'm Neera Tanden. Like, this stuff is unbelievable. Someone like this should never, ever come within an arm's length of a position of power. And yet we have people like Elizabeth Warren saying, I had a great discussion with Neera Tanden today about how the OMB can help working families and strengthen our economy. She has never, ever, ever once in her life advocated for programs that do exactly what you're talking about, Liz. So how about you stop playing the political game within your power and actually stand up for those working families that you're signaling that you're actually supporting and advocating for. This person is the exact opposite of that. Let's continue. Jen Psaki, who's done a great, great, great job as Joe Biden's press secretary so far, she says Neera Tanden equals accomplished policy expert, would be first Asian American woman to lead. The weaponization of identity. I'm gonna have to do a video on that. The weaponization of identity politics is just so gross, so gross. Would be first Asian American woman to lead OMB, has lived experience having benefited from a number of federal programs as a kid that she now wants to cut. So those same programs that benefited her as a kid, she now advocates to cut so we can go into Libya and Iraq and all these other places and destabilize those regions. She said it. I mean, what do you want? You want cuts to Head Start or WIC or Medicaid? Like, we have to get Libya to we have to go over there and take their oil. What else are we going to do? Unbelievable. Even Bernie has not committed to not voting for her. That hurts me, Bernie. Don't do that. Don't do this. She has used every second of her life since 2016 to bash your movement, to bash you, and to advocate for programs, against programs that you advocate for, because you know it's going to actually help people. She has spent her entire career climbing within the Democratic Party, which also meant advocating against some of these programs. So I say reject Neera Tanden. That's what I say. And I can't say she never did anything great, because if we take a look at this tweet, this was my first really viral political tweet. And I said, WikiLeaks exposed you for wanting to take Libyan oil as payback for overthrowing their government. Libya is now a failed state and a terrorist hotbed. You're a warmonger. Voters rejected your ideology in 2016. So you know who likes you, Neera? Trump. You helped him get elected. So I can't say she never did anything good. She helped me go viral for the first time politically, I guess. So thank you for that, Neera Tanden. All I can say is you should never be anywhere in a position of power. And I'm calling on all Democratic senators to reject Neera Tanden.